Okay. Well, welcome everyone to this week's episode of Alignment Vision Action. I am your host, Laurel Rutledge, and I have my special guest, Kyra Renel, with me tonight. And I am so excited because we are going to talk. Yeah, wait till y'all hear all the stuff that she's doing. And we are going to talk about what it really means to be aligned with who you are and your divine purpose, and not only using that to create your vision, but then actually taking action to make some stuff happen. So we're going to talk through all of that tonight. But what I also want to do is for those of you who are new to Fireside, I always like to do this in the very beginning. So at the very bottom, in the bottom left hand, you'll see what they call the hamburger. And there you can do your show settings. You can ask to speak, all of those kind of things if you want to jump up on stage and make some comments or ask some questions of Kyra as we go through the show. Then in the bottom right, you see the react button. And you can use that by clicking on the react button. You select an emoji and you can just send that. And there's actual sounds with that. Or you can go to the react button, select an emoji, and then type in a note. And when you do that, a little cloud shows above your head. So I know that there's a comment or a question. And you can always ask to be up on stage, ask to be on video. We can have up to 4 people on video at one time. So if there's something that comes up and you are ready to jump in, please feel free to do that. So with that, I'm going to get started, and I want to introduce you really quickly to Kyra. I'm not going to give you her whole bio because it's in the show notes, and I want to spend most of our time chatting. So she is the founder and managing consultant of the Kyra Company, LLC, and she focuses on operations and business development in this firm of hers, and it's a consulting firm. She's also an author. She's a speaker. She's a consultant. She is a winning corporate and nonprofit management leader. She also does some amazing things in the community with young people, really getting them ready to be successful in whatever it is they're trying to pursue. And so, Kyra, welcome to Alignment Vision Action on Fireside.
Hello, thank you for having me. Thank you, Laurel.
Yes.
It's first of all, I love new technology. So this is day one. I was 30 years old when I learned this was a
Yes.
thing. So thank you for
Yes.
having me.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a really cool platform, and I'm just so excited to be on here and doing these things. And so, one of the things that I've been trying to do on this show is really helping people think deeply about that whole idea of alignment, vision, action, right? It got really clear for me, and when I work through my clients with that is you got to be aligned with who you are and where you are. You got to know what you want, and you got to know what it's going to take and what you're willing to do to get there. And so for you, I've had the pleasure of knowing you for a while, and we've had the opportunity to talk a couple of times. But what I'd like you to do is really help people understand that process where you got really clear on who you are and what your purpose is in service to others.
Well, that's loaded because I think it happened in like phases. So I'll go
Yeah.
to the first time I knew that I had an alignment
Mhm.
with my purpose, and that was I was somewhere around the age of 22-ish,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
I wanted to do something, and it was all related to like my 16-year-old story, right? When I fell in the gap
Yeah.
moment where I realized that God put his hand on me and said, "No, baby, you're gonna live, and here's how this is gonna work." And I
Yes.
remember kind of hearing a song. My heart was longing for purpose. I wanted something specific. I was working in automotive design and in operations, and I was
Mhm.
getting out of my car, heard a song, and the song was a Yolanda Adams song, and it said, "Keep the dream alive, don't let it die. There's something deep inside inspiring you to try. Don't stop." And immediately
Yes.
the waterworks started, and here I am, this 20 something, about to go into work all peppy and suited and booted. And I was like, I can't go in there like this. I am pink,
Yeah.
I am flesh. And I didn't. I got it together, but in that moment is when I got the first download that, hey, you're going to
Mhm.
start this nonprofit, and here's your focus. And that's really
Yeah.
what happened. I remember click clacking through the hallways in my heels, and in my head saying on repeat, "I'm starting a nonprofit. I'm starting a nonprofit." Like I literally just said it on repeat. And I
Yeah.
remember going, and I tell people this story, and I literally went to like print the internet and around
Mhm.
nonprofits. I was like,
Right.
I'm going to print the internet, and it was like. I apologize, General Motors, but from the
Yes.
paper to the binders and the highlighters that I used to print the internet and take it home with me so I could read it, it was
Yes.
powerful. But I wanted to understand. I just wanted to find anything that would help me do it. And
Mm-hmm.
I realized then that that was the journey. That's when the journey started for Imagine Excellence, which is my nonprofit, which is my
Yes.
oldest entity. And I love it. That's my heart work. Like, I do that all day in
Yes.
the schools, working with kids, building leaders,
Mm-hmm.
preventing risky behavior, and really is positive youth development. It's all about the mitigation of risk for me on that.
Yes.
And that was the first time I got the initial download. And then from there, I will tell you, I I think I've always been a people leader. When I worked
Mm-hmm.
in corporate America in healthcare, I would always tell people I had the pleasure of having like this silver fox VP, this really
Yes.
super jazzy director, another super focused and metrics driven director, and another kind of in the middle but a no nonsense director. All
Mm-hmm.
women, all black women at that. And when people say they kind of were born out of an environment that didn't look like them, that is not my story. I had these
Yeah.
women that, like, in their own way, each one of them groomed me to a level of excellence. And
Mm-hmm.
I changed careers from automotive and went into healthcare. And when I went into leadership in healthcare, they like wing clipped me, groomed me, and was like, "This is how this goes, ma'am. This is how you
Yes.
dress. This is how you show up. Don't walk the halls without a notebook. Make sure you're ready at all
Right.
times. You don't know who's watching. Know your numbers. I mean, everything you could think of. Be kind to people. Make
Yeah.
sure you take care of it." And so then it just started to become this. It was a feeding ground for me. I just ate
Mm-hmm.
every bit of what they gave me, and I wanted every morsel. I was a sponge, a sponge, a sponge. And I'm at this point growing a family and learning and
Mm-hmm.
working on my degree. I was a non-traditional student,
Yeah.
and so I was working on my bachelor's, and I was just when I tell you, wide open, I mean
Yes.
wide open. And I just learned, and I gleaned, and I asked.
Yeah.
I didn't stop.
Right. Well, and I know, and there's so much to the story, but there's one thing that I want to dig deeper into around this alignment and how we support people. And it gets to representation. And
Mhm.
you said, I had this amazing place where I was fed, these amazing Black women leaders. And so my story wasn't I was the one of only, at least in this formative place. Talk about the strength of that, because there's so much diverse DEI, and now we got to have a B on it because heaven
I
forbid we
love
actually
it.
do DEI the way we're supposed to. We got to add something else, right? But you had that nurturing and that feel, and I don't think people understand the power
Yeah.
of representation and what it means. Can you talk before we move to the next piece of the story? Can you talk a little bit about that and the impact of that for
Sure.
you?
I absolutely will. And I'll say this. I was born in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And so now
Hmm.
in Houston, but I grew up in a very I don't know if that's the right word. It's like we're chameleons, right? You kind of just said that. My
Yes.
friends were black, white, Malaysian, Asian, African, everything. And for me, I was around diversity at its best at all times. And so when I went into the
Yes.
workforce, I was kind of used to being as even younger, one of the
Yeah.
only black women. I didn't, and
Hmm.
but I was I'll say I was connected to my environment. So I might have been
Hmm.
oblivious to things that were around me that were happening. I learned how to
Right.
be an advocate for myself very early, just simply because I was young and I was a professional and I was in environments
Hmm.
that my peers weren't typically in.
Right.
So when I got into the environment in healthcare, it was almost a culture shock for me because I was like, whoa, right? I mean, think about design
Yes.
is not loaded with
Right.
minorities. I mean, let me say it differently. Not black individuals. You have a select few
Yes.
at the top in design that are like lead designers, engineers, etc., and
Right.
sculptors. I was around creatives. Now there were
Hmm.
plenty for me to get, like those that were there. We all connected, but that I didn't just need that, and so I want to also emphasize
Right.
that I realized I needed the whole picture. And
Yes.
so once I moved around in that space in healthcare, and I recognized that these women saw something in me that I didn't know existed, it was almost
Yes.
like they were cultivating something. I didn't even know it needed to be cultivated, but I was being
Yeah.
groomed. And this is where I learned the power of that alignment was that they spoke straight to me. They would pull me in the office. I get that call, Kyra, I need to see you in
Hmm.
my office. I wasn't
Hmm.
afraid. I grabbed my notebook. I knew they were going to invest in me. And so whether I
Mm-hmm.
was being taught something, redirected on something,
Yes.
offered an opportunity, I knew it was for my good. So I just had this nurturing that was just so. I mean, it's really a replay. To this day, I still call and say thank you because of how much. And
Yes.
they pretty much all retired. One of my mentor passed away,
Mm.
but just to know that they were there. And so you have we'll use Leslie as an
Yeah.
example. Leslie, I'll leave her last name off.
Yeah.
She was about the metrics. And so when she'd
Yes.
sit you down and you send your reports up, she'd call you in and drill you on your numbers. And if you didn't know your numbers, she almost act like she was belligerent about your numbers.
Right.
And you need, it was this reverse psychology thing she would do.
Yes.
And you better pop those numbers out
Mm-hmm.
like that. And then I had Jackie, who was my mentor, who has passed away. And
Mm-hmm.
Jackie would ask you about people. How do you feel?
Mm-hmm.
How do your people
Right.
feel? So I've got metrics and I've got engagement happening. And then I had
Yes.
Gail, and Gail is our VP, and Gail was no
Mm-hmm.
nonsense. So she'd ask you about anything at any point in time. Come in my office.
Right.
And you needed to be ready. And it was not
Mm-hmm.
about, I felt loved and cared for, right? I felt
Yes.
protected. I felt like I was being taught the way. And so for
Mm-hmm.
me, I recognized the value of that from every book that they gave me, from all the training that I
Yes.
received. And I wasn't the only one. I could see
Right.
many of my peers to this day that are flourishing in the space of leadership and people development,
Mm-hmm.
and it's because of that foundation that we receive. So that
Yes.
is an irreplaceable alignment to be able to see people that look like you and they come straight to you. They understand what you. I was
Yes.
too young to know what I didn't know, so they came straight to my gaps and filled them. You know.
Yes. And that's so important, Kyra, because oh, so much to unpack. So it's important because representation matters. It's
Yes.
important because I remember when my grandmother died. This was 30 years ago at least. When my grandmother died, I remember sitting in her living room and there were all these people there, right? And sitting in my living room, she was an educator and all the people she was around were educators. And I
Hmm.
remember this man coming in and sitting at the table. He was kind of holding court almost, right? Elderly. He was clearly the senior man in the room. And I remember him saying, I understand desegregation.
Mm.
I understand why it happened, when it happened, all that kind of stuff. He said, but we lost something when we stopped teaching our own. And we are the only people who send our children to the enemy to teach. And I remember hearing that and thinking, I don't know what you're talking about. Because I grew up, my parents sent us to private school. Education was the thing. They were going to make sure we had good schooling. But then as I sat back and listened to all the conversations around it, he wasn't saying that it was a terrible thing that we got exposure to other stuff and got opportunities for other things. What he said was there was a level of care and concern and we gonna make this we got you. We're gonna make this
Yes.
happen. We're not gonna let you
Yes.
go out looking any kind of way, doing any kind of
Yes.
thing. You are going to show up and we're going to make sure we are circling the wagons to build the village. And we lost that when we lost some of our communities. And so,
Yes.
when we talk about that alignment, vision, and action, part of that alignment is that understanding, that nurturing right at the very beginning. How do you understand what that is from the beginning so you can see who you are and where you are, so you can determine what you want and then move into action, right?
That is par excellence. And then when you said that, I was thinking, you know, because I received what I received on the front end. My mother, I tell people now, my mother is the smartest woman I know. My mother's an information scientist, so you
Hmm.
don't value that when you're in the
Right.
house with her and you're reading encyclopedias. But here's the thing.
Right.
It don't
Hindsight,
mean those
honey.
are transferable skills. You've got legal
Right.
pad worth of math problems to do when you're on your off day in the summer. But
Yes.
my point though to that is there's a level of investment that you make, and I think in
Hmm.
ways I've taken and then reinvested in my family, my children for sure. But beyond
Yes.
that, in my companies, I am very intentional about the people. And I am
Hmm.
very focused on making sure that we have a culture that is indicative of growth and grace.
Hmm.
And we want people to learn in a safe place
Yes.
because we understand that that builds their engagement, that then helps them to understand their value internally, and then they then
Yes.
express it externally. So because I understand the logic of people and how to get people mobilized around metrics or outcomes, I understand the value of having the right conversations with people, even if
Yes.
it's the hard conversation. I'm willing to have it so we can get where
Yes.
we're trying to go. And typically it's going to move them even further down the line. And so I will say I immediately even adopted that. When I was in
Mm-hmm.
healthcare, I'll tell you, this was something, a standard that I established with my team. And I was
Mm-hmm.
nearing the time when I knew I wanted to move to Texas. And I told my team, at that time, I had a team of about 22. And I
Mm-hmm.
said, here's the deal. I won't move until you all are in your next role, which means based on your performance plan,
Yes.
this is when you're supposed to be moving along. You let's get these things moving because
Yes.
y'all gonna slow me down if we're not on track.
Yes.
And because we were building as a team, quality was important. You can't compromise quality. We're
Yes.
gonna come at 98% or better. This is what I
Mm-hmm.
need to see from you. So if you want to move around, I'll write your letters of recommendation. I know your quality. I know you're
Right.
working it out. And I did not leave until the last person said, Kyra, in his review, he said, Kyra, I just got the offer. I said, and guess what? That's it for me.
That's
His
it.
name is David. When David Ahmed got his offer, I remember him coming in there. He had his amazing blue little kind of pullover on, and
Right.
he was just like, I did it. I said, and you were the last one. I waited for you, and I promised my team
Yes.
that. And so once that happened, then I was free to move around. And I
Mm-hmm.
meant that to them. But that was something that they will
Yes.
never forget, that someone invested that kind of time and quality to get them to their next
Yes.
level. And so even to
Yes.
this day, I had one of my former employees on a call, and she
Mm-hmm.
shared, I was opening up a mentorship program, and she was sharing, and she said, you don't understand. Like when you left, I
Yeah.
knew my life would be different. And
Yeah.
really was in tears, and it was also emotional for me. She said, I knew
Mm-hmm.
when you left, my life would be different because you don't understand how much you invested in me. And I think that's the transferable,
Yes.
value that you'll never ever be able to bottle up and quantify.
Yes.
But I knew there was something special, and I'm gonna say this without apology. I knew there was something
Right.
special about my leadership skills when I fired someone and they hugged me and said, "Thank you. I know you did all you could do."
Yes. Why don't people get that? I'm like, number one, we don't fire people. People make the decision to not be there and to be successful somewhere else. That's number one. But
That's
number
it.
two, you do not have to make it this contentious, ugly, nasty things because
Yeah,
sometimes it's just not a fit. It's just not. And
it's
that's
just
not
not a
a
fit.
judgment on the person's character. The character has nothing to do with it. It just
Yeah,
doesn't work.
no, it doesn't work. It was something. It happened twice. And I was
Yeah.
just like, this person just got up and hugged me. And let me tell you that I'll tell you, that's how you know you're in alignment though. That I saw
Yes.
the person at like a convenience store in a strip center. And she's
Hmm.
like, oh mom, this is my former boss. Yeah, this is the one that fired me. I want you to meet
Yeah.
her. And I'm like, this is really interesting.
Right.
I must be
Yes.
doing something right, And so I will say,
Yes.
from a people perspective, the alignment in that, Laurel, to
Hmm.
round out the question, which is
Yeah.
critical. But from the
Yes.
nonprofit to the consulting firm, where we focus on
Hmm.
people, process, profitability, I'm focusing on
Yes.
the things that I got right in corporate
Yes.
America and that I learned. And when I fully understood the life cycle of a company, it's built on your people and your processes. That's what develops your
Hmm.
culture, and that
Hmm.
then impacts your ability to generate revenue. And so we
Yes.
we worry about the money first. We're going to worry about the people first and the processes that they're working in to increase the efficiencies. That's how
Hmm.
you take care of your people, and that's how you generate revenue in an evergreen world. You can
Right.
create that, right? And so you want
Right.
to, if you look at it from that perspective, you got this nonprofit where I'm building leaders early on, this corporate,
Hmm.
this consulting firm where we're working directly with small to mid-sized business leaders. We're working directly with senior and executives and corporations. We're
Hmm.
working inside the supply chain, and we're working with strategic thinkers that want to
Hmm.
build better organizations. And so
Yes.
essentially in my world, I would love, and I'm working on it
Yes.
desperately, for it
Yes.
to be just a continuous pipeline so that the young folks that
Right.
move through the their college pathway, whatever their success
Hmm.
path is, can roll right into entrepreneurship or roll right into
Yeah.
internship with these companies that we have relationships with. Why can't we be Why can't we be the
Right.
cause of the cure, right? And so that's what we
Absolutely.
want. That's what we want.
Yeah.
So when you think about alignment, loyal, Laurel, it took me a long time to realize my
Yeah.
nonprofit and my for-profit could exist in the same space.
Yes.
I was just
Mm-hmm.
afraid of the idea of commingling anything, even my thoughts, right? And so
Right, right, right. Well, and it's
I
like I just had this conversation with somebody today about, I always talk about my mind is messy, and I own that. It's also what makes me so good at what I do, because
yeah,
it's constantly moving and I'm constantly thinking on multiple planes. And I had someone else tell me it's not messy, you're just multi-passionate, and I'm like, I like that. Right? That's a line.
that feels good. And
Yes, that
so
feels
I
good.
but it is, and but I
Yes.
tell people this too when people say, "Well, how do you do all of this?" First of all, I
Yeah.
don't, and then
Hmm.
second of all, I didn't start everything at one time. My nonprofit
Right.
was started, literally it started back in 2005, matured, and,
Hmm.
and we did our first event in 2008. And I was working in
Hmm.
corporate America, so I've always had two jobs, right? So
Right.
it's just kind of grown with me, and then
Hmm.
my consulting firm was born out of my transition. When I left corporate America, I was
Right.
removed and returned to the community basically. And
Mhm.
so when I
Mhm.
took that layoff slash firing slash
Mhm.
we'll figure it out,
Yes.
I walked into 9 months of transition, and my nonprofit is what actually brought me into the full realm of entrepreneurship. And
Mhm.
then from there, I just innately started helping people solve problems around their
Yeah.
business. And one of my colleagues said, she's my friend she's my friend, but she's now my colleague,
Yeah.
truly. She said, she said, she always calls me by my middle name,
Yeah.
Kyra Renel,
Yeah.
why are you not doing this for people? And I said,
Yes.
doing what?
Yeah.
And she said, this. I said, what do you
Yeah.
mean? This is just nothing. She said, I've been trying for years to figure this out. And you just literally broke
Right.
down my strategic plan in like literally
Yes.
20. And I said, this is just how I think. I don't know that this is a
Yes.
thing. And I mean, she had me in like this prayer system. She had me, I don't even know how
Right.
many days. It was like this 6:30 a.m. thing. She was birthing
Yes.
me. I was like, who gave you? You are a midwife woman. And
Right.
she was just on me. I had some other
Yeah.
girlfriends that were on me, on me, on me.
Mhm.
And finally, she was like, well, what are you going to call this thing? I'm like,
Yeah.
call what? And so she said, just call it Kyra Renel. I said, I'm not naming
Yeah.
my company after myself. That's just self righteous. And
Yes.
she's like, well, what are you going to call it? And so, I said, I don't know. And then
Yes.
I stepped back and I said, okay, listen, I just want one name. Well, and
Yes.
I started thinking about it, and I said, well, maybe one day the Kyra company could sound like Coca-Cola, or
Yes. Exactly.
Cola, or I don't know,
Right.
Wells, I don't
Deloitte.
know.
Right.
You're like, one day
Yes.
it's just gonna sound regular. So
Yes.
I just literally talked myself into it, literally after being heavily influenced by her,
Yeah.
and I was tossing it around the house. And everybody's like, okay, yeah, call it the Kyra. I'm like, well, we're gonna call it the Kyra Company, because I don't
Yes.
want it to be. This is not a fad. This is not a coaching, fad. I'm not trying to
Right.
just get rich quick and make six figures.
Right.
I'm gonna build a company.
Right.
And that's where I set out to do what I set out to do. And it was just really pulling in all those skills that I
Yeah.
had been invested with, or
Mhm.
have been invested in me. And I
Yeah.
literally just did what I knew to do. I've been in operations. I know how to build. And I just started building. I don't know
Yeah.
what the true roadmap was. I found a mentor and a coach, and I started listening.
Mhm.
I needed to learn, Laurel, this is big.
Yes.
I needed to learn entrepreneur language. I needed to learn the language of the Wild
Yes.
Wild West because I didn't know it.
And so this is important. I have
Yeah.
had this conversation with more people because I'm actually, we talk about this all the time, right? Coaches need coaches, experts need experts. And so I'm actually in a business accelerator right now. And one of the things I was talking to one of the people about is, I've had coaches, I've had people before, and they've been all really good at some stuff. But the thing that I want corporate people to do who decide to go into entrepreneurship is find somebody who's an entrepreneur who's been in corporate so they can translate the language for you, because the language of entrepreneur, you're saying strategy, you're saying social media strategy, you're saying budgeting strategy, you're saying all these same words, they mean something different.
They mean something totally different. And I
Yes.
remember the first time I had to tell people were like, so you're a coach then? No, I am not a coach. And I didn't, and don't be offended by that. What
No,
I'm saying
I
is,
hate that word. Yes.
a business developer. That means sales.
Yes.
No, that means I am going to develop your business, like the
Yes.
purest form of the two words. And it was
Yes.
like, wow, it doesn't translate. So I had
No.
to educate people on what it means to work with a business
Yes.
developer. I am a developer
Yes.
of your entity. When I am
Mm-hmm.
done working with you, you will be fully developed. And that was
Yes.
one of the things I had to slow people down to hear. And when I would hear people say, kind of in passing, "Oh, you need a coach. You need to call Coach Kyra or Coach
Mm-hmm.
May." I started getting all these really, really fun, nicknames. I'm not opposed to
Yep.
those things, but what I just
Right.
want to make sure of is that people understood I play the long game, not the short game. And so, if
Yes.
you want a quick fix,
Yes.
I am not the person because I'm
I'm
going
not
in.
the person. No.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing too. And we talk about, at least for me, and you and I've had this conversation, words matter, right? Especially when you're talking about getting aligned, getting clear on your vision and moving into action, words matter. And
Yes.
so there are places where you'll see coach because they don't give you another option. When I talk
Yes.
about me, right? If you're
Yes.
on LinkedIn, if you're on these other places, they get entrepreneur or coach. Well, okay, entrepreneur because I need some access that they only give if you say entrepreneur. But I'm like you. I hate using that word coach, not in offense to people who have truly spent their life and feel like they are executive coaches, right? And who have done the ICF certifications and done all that stuff. That's great. I also know I have hired in my life a ton of coaches in corporate. And just like every other certification, and I can say this because I've got some, a certification doesn't mean expert. A certification means you took the test and did well. That's what that means. That does not mean you can necessarily execute. And there's a level of coaching that's all about just questions. I'm about action. That's what's
Yeah.
called alignment, vision, action. That's great that we're going to talk about it. But a goal without a plan is just a wish. You got to move, baby. You got to
Yeah.
move. If you want to make a
It's
change, you've got to do
telling
something.
you, transformative leadership. That's the space I
Yes.
occupy. And if you're
Yes.
not here for, I tell people, you either are you ready, right? You need to be ready to work with someone like myself. It sounds like the
Yes.
same thing for you, Laurel.
Yes.
And in order to move, you've got to understand there are actions and there's accountability. This
Yes.
is not the bullet train. It is going
No.
to require you to get close and come and intimate
Mm-hmm.
with what you're doing. It is going to
Mm-hmm.
require you to be exposed in terms of your blind spots and be developed
Yes.
in areas where you are not strong. None of
Yes.
us cover 100% of the surface. None of us.
None of us.
We
None of
cannot
us.
do it. We cannot do
No.
it. And so I
No.
think that's the part that we have to accept that we need
Yeah.
support along the way, and it varies as you grow. As
Yes.
you get further along on the journey, the air gets thinner. The list of available, support people is a
Yes.
lot less. But you find your way.
Yeah.
And when you think about alignment too, here's a very important piece I think
Mm-hmm.
we all need to adopt when we think about even our coaches or our mentors that we bring into our life.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a life coach, right?
Yeah.
My life coach is there to guide me through actions that I'm committing to take. I do
Mm-hmm.
have a
Mm-hmm.
therapist. My therapist is there to help me unpack things from my
Yes.
past and or my present that I have not been
Yes.
able to open up. Now,
Right.
my mentor, which is where I typically struggle the greatest in maintaining a certain type or level of mentor, and I realized
Yeah.
quickly that I need a variety of mentors
Mm-hmm.
across my life.
Yes.
And so, your mentor is not necessarily your true confidant. And I think
Mm-mm.
sometimes we think that that's what that is. Your mentor is really there to
It's
be 10 steps
not.
ahead of you and kind of
Yes.
see ahead and share. That's the
And tell you the
relationship.
truth. Tell you the truth. They're not there to be your best friend.
They're
That's what the
not.
rest of your village is for.
Yeah. You need people that'll pick you apart and give you back to yourself so you can go deal with it. And
Yes.
I think that's important. And
Agreed.
it's not necessarily, but that's how you stay sharp. And if you put
Yes.
yourself around a gang of yes people, you're going to literally fall into your own sinkhole. I don't want it.
Just stop. Yeah, just stop. Hey, Stephanie. We have Stephanie McGann Jansen in the audience. She is the mayor of Fireside. She's amazing. Love Stephanie.
Definitely.
Yeah. So Kyra, as we've been talking about the alignment piece, which is so important in that vision, you're making I won't call it a shift because I think it probably is more aligned. Um, it's just more visible. It became more visible to you as you continued to grow and move. But this whole movement more into this media space and developing a media company, right? And doing some things like
Yeah.
that. How does that, one, how does it align with where you're going and this developer of businesses? But how did that vision come about and you decided to just move there, move into that action?
Well, Laurel, I'm going to give you the tea. So, we decided to move into the lane of literally being a media company owner. And I have a partner in this business. So,
Mm-hmm.
I'm a co creator, a co founder with Sylvia Franklin out of LA.
Mm-hmm.
But this was born out of a need for us to tell our stories. It
Mm-hmm.
became incredibly amplified. She and I had a conversation in like 2000, maybe 16, 15,
Yeah.
16. And we were sitting in LA at a coffee shop, and I'm like, and she's in the industry, and I'm like, why are
Yeah.
you not walking around with a camera on your shoulder, girl? She's like, well, first of all, I'm a writer, so you
Right.
need to understand how this works.
Right.
But what we really started digging into was there are so many stories that need to be told. And so we
Yes.
kind of left it alone, and we reconnected about a year or two ago,
Mm-hmm.
and we had a conversation, and I invited her to come with me on a retreat, and on that retreat we started building this idea. And as we're sitting by the ocean, I said, Sylvia, what would we literally just kind of went into ideation. What would it
Mm-hmm.
look like? We realized we wanted to start a company. So BWA Media is the media
Mm-hmm.
company, and BWA stands for Black Women Are Media.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yes.
what we wanted to do was express the narrative of Black women in a way that allowed us to not be Kyra the consultant, Kyra the this,
Mm-hmm.
but who is Kyra Renel?
Kyra.
Who
Yes.
is Laurel Rutledge? That I
Mm-hmm.
don't care about what you do. At this point, what you do is the least important thing. Who are
Right.
you? And so when we
Yes.
get into the conversation and telling and allowing us to curate our own narrative, and
Mm-hmm.
don't get me wrong, the conversation is not narrow and only to Black women. The
Right.
conversation around Black women, our media, is the understanding that we are generators of so much.
Yes.
And so, in
Absolutely.
order for that narrative to be told, and for it not to be told to us but by us,
Yeah.
we decided to take the reins in this way, and it is aligned because one, we're inviting the network that we've curated over
Mm-hmm.
years to come into this conversation and dialogue. That's number
Yes.
one, and then number
Yeah.
two, it is going to be met with an e-commerce component
Mm-hmm.
only.
Uh-oh.
You got me back.
There you are. Okay.
Black women are not
Yeah. Yeah.
only, incredible communicators. Women in general are incredible communicators, but we are
Mm-hmm.
also very resourceful, and we
Mm-hmm.
create and offer this world so much. We wanted
Yes.
to literally realize it by pulling it into one place. And so for
Yeah.
us, it is about cultivating the narrative and helping us have a place to do that and to do it
Mm-hmm.
incredibly well. And so we
Yes.
have gone into production, and we have season one and
Yeah.
season two in the queue right now that are on the editing table. And so it is
Awesome.
an incredible space to be in. It is an incredible line to walk, but I will tell you, it is a process to learn and grow. We're not releasing it until it's spectacular. And
I
we
get
did
it.
a preview in Jamaica in
Mm-hmm.
July of season one just to give them a taste of the stories. And so
Yeah.
right now we're
Yeah.
in kind of the revision of the editing and going through that now. But
Yes.
you all, I can't wait for the world to experience Black Women Are Media. I can't wait for the
Yeah.
world to experience the women, the dynamic conversations that we're
Yeah.
having with them. And these are strategically curated conversations, and so that's
Yes.
what I'm saying. So it all ties together. It's
It
this is
does.
this is my if it didn't cost a thing, or if it cost everything, this is one of those things that I'm going to do because I've always wanted to do this.
Yeah.
So I'm finally in the vein of saying, if
Yeah.
this means media mogul, well, so be it. I'm here for it. Okay.
Yeah, well, and that's it's so funny that you say that because someone was asking me the other day. They're like, "Okay, you've got this piece of your business, but you got three shows that are going on. We don't understand." I'm like, you know what? I can't say I understand either. All I know is this is where I'm supposed to be. I'm
That's it.
supposed to be doing this podcast that's quick and short and dirty because I know what it means when you are in corporate and they're making you crazy. You don't have time to listen to an hour-long podcast. You need that short, sweet, get fed and keep it moving. I
Yes.
know being on that radio show gives me a platform to talk about educating people, getting to the vote, getting registered, showing up, being honest, being real, right? Getting a global reach, that is important to me. And then doing this, one, as you said, the technology, Steffi and I, she does such great work, her shows and the things that they've put together here, Mark Cuban and Fallon Fatamy in this platform, really keeping creators at the forefront when they
Yes.
created this. And so being invited to be a creator on here, I thought, you know what, God wink. Let me just keep going. There is something in my message, even if I don't know it, there is
Yeah.
something in my message that resonates with people. And who am I to not take these gifts that I have been given and
Yeah.
share them? Because we are called to share the gifts we have been given, not to hold them.
Absolutely.
Right.
No, they don't
And
belong to
so
us.
I'm right there with you. Right. I don't know where this came from, but it came and I'm riding it
Let's
until
do
it's
it.
gone.
Let's do it. This is
Yes.
the good work. I call it the good work.
Yeah.
We honor our legacy of getting into good trouble, right?
Yes.
The
Yes.
Honorable John Lewis says, but I'm saying now I'm gonna take that and walk into the good work that we do. So we're doing the good
Yes.
work. And so I'm grateful for being able
Yeah.
to do the good work every day.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, it has been such an awesome time. We're at about almost 40 minutes, so I will let you guys. If there's anybody in the chat who'd like to come on and ask a question or come up to the stage, please do so as we get ready to end. Because Kyra and I could talk for another 4 hours, quite frankly, about all of this. Because there's just so much to unpack here. But Kyra, as you think about everything, kind of almost pulling up, right? And looking at all of the things. One of the keys, even in this accelerator that I'm in now, one of the keys is around this action piece, right? It is like you said, we were thinking about this, we had a conversation, we ended up going to this retreat, we just started ideation, we're like, let's just do it.
Yeah.
And innovation requires us to move and be willing to fail fast, right?
Yeah.
Be willing to say, I don't know, but let's just try it and see what happens.
Yeah.
I know when I started the podcast, I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to say. Let me just do it. One person listens, no people listen. It just, you just keep showing up. You've got to do something. Done is
Yeah.
better than perfect, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so if you think about the people you work with, the businesses you help develop, what is it that you can tell people maybe almost as a little piece of guidance to say, if they're really worried about moving, not just failure, because it's not always just fear of failure. There's other stuff that can be in that head trust. And I'm like you, thank God for therapy, right? There's other stuff in the head trust that can keep you from moving.
Yeah.
But what is maybe one or two key things you could give to people that could say, you know what? If you really are going to get into action, that means you have to move. And if you're stuck, think about this to unstick yourself. What would you say to people?
I'm gonna answer that, and it may be two parts. The first one
Okay.
is you either have time to do it right or do it over.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first thing. And
Mm-hmm.
if we can align with that in our lives, I think we would move a little more strategic, and we'd move a little more poignantly to get to the place that we're trying to get to and
Mm-hmm.
not play the
Mm-hmm.
game.
Yeah.
That's one. The second one is this: small thoughts will be with us forever. It is our
Yes.
choice to adopt them. And small thoughts, if you don't know how you think, it is
Yes.
your, well, thank you for that.
Yes.
If you
I know.
don't
That's what I love
know,
about Fireside, right?
I love that. Oh my goodness. If you don't know how you think, your first inventory is an inventory of your thoughts and behaviors.
Yes.
And I teach
Yes.
that now in my mentorship program. It's called The Richest I've Ever Been. And the
Mm-hmm.
next session, they're getting ready to learn what it means to manage and monitor your behavior so that you can
Yes.
understand why the thoughts show up, why the behavior mimics it, and why you get stuck there. And so I'm going to
Yes.
show you how to move through with tools to maneuver that. And I
Hmm.
really want to start though with the idea of you either have time to do it right or do it over,
Hmm.
because that
Hmm.
will help you think more thoughtfully about what you're doing.
Hmm.
That's number one.
Hmm.
And then number
Hmm.
two is mind your thoughts.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
have we all have them. And so
Yes.
the small thoughts come to cripple us. The more
Yes.
crippling, the more repetitive, the more crippling. And so it just digs a deeper and much more deeper ditch
Yeah.
for us. So
Yes.
you can choose your thoughts. You can you can literally hold them captive when you hear them coming
Hmm.
up. And
Yes.
sometimes, I'll be driving. I'll tell you this little secret, Laura. And I know we got to wrap
Hmm.
up. I'll be
Yeah.
driving sometimes, and I'll hear something come up, and I'll say it all the way out. I'm gonna say it because I don't want it to get stuck in here. I said, but you got
Yes.
to. I will just have a
Yes.
real ignorant conversation about it. You
Right.
got to go.
Yes. Yes. I agree. Tracy Ellis Ross, one time I was seeing her when Oprah was doing the tour before the pandemic. And she said, when those kind of things come up, I'm like, thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate it. Now I'm going to let you go away. Good for you. Now go sit over there because I got other stuff to do. Right.
Got other
But,
stuff
but
to
I,
do.
I got other stuff to do. And I think what happens sometimes, especially for women, is one, there's a lot of stories we tell ourselves. Don't be too this, don't be too that. We don't do well with money, all the stuff. But the other thing I think that women have a tendency to be ready to do, if we will allow ourselves to do it, is the hard work. That mindset work is not easy work. As you
Nope.
said, you've got to be willing to look at you. You've got to be willing to say, you know what? This is me. I understand my triggers. And these are the ones that I'm going to own because I'm not going to do anything about those. I know I
Yeah.
don't have a poker face. At nearly 54, I'm not changing that. It is not worth working on it. But what I know, because I know I don't have one, what I do know is how to control the words that come out of my mouth.
Yes.
I can control my words. I can control my tone so that
Yes.
my face may be saying, have you lost your mind? But my words say, help me understand. Right. And so
Absolutely. So that's a big thing,
yes,
Laurel.
it's
That's a
huge.
big
It's
thing.
huge. And it's a mindset issue of knowing yourself so well and giving yourself so much grace that none of us are perfect. We all have things we can learn, but we can learn them and we can make a choice of what we're going to allow, and we can set up I call them with my clients kind of the same thing, these early warning signs. Notice your triggers.
Yes.
Understand your own triggers, and then whatever you have to do. When I first started therapy, something would come up. I'd literally have to put my hands up and say, stop. I had to
Yep.
short circuit the narrative that was starting. And that
Yes.
was the only, I had to have a physical reaction to short circuit it. Whatever
Yes.
works for you, get in that mind work so that you can do the other work,
That's it.
right? Because you can't
That's
get into
it.
your purpose if you can't get out of your head. You
That's
just can't.
it. That's a
You
mic
just can't.
drop.
You just can't, right? Well, Kyra, I mean, so one, we are going to do this again, for sure, because it's a lot of fun, but two, I think it is such a great opportunity to on this platform to have people come and see you and listen and jump in, and with the replay, people are going to get to see it. You guys, please, as you listen to this replay, go follow Kyra. Get ready for BWA Media, because that is
Yeah.
coming. And she is out there, Kyra Renel, and that's with an accent over the E, Kyra Renel on all of her platforms. And so definitely follow her. And if you are a small business, if you are an entrepreneur, if you are really looking to move and you're serious about it, give Kyra a call, see if that makes sense, right? Because there
Absolutely.
are people out there who are willing and wanting to help you get to where you want to be if you're serious about it.
Oh
If
yeah.
you're serious about it. So, Kyra, thank you so much. Kayla, I see you in the bottom. Thank you so much for helping us get ready and get here tonight.
Yes.
Everyone that was in the show, thank you there. I see Bookworm, I see you just got on. Stephanie, as always, you are so supportive. I see my mom in the audience. Thank you.
Hey
Woody's
there.
here. Woody shows up for every show. He is so awesome. Thank you, Woody, for being here. And so, all of you, have a fantastic night. I appreciate you so much being a part of Alignment Vision Action here on Fireside. It's every Wednesday. And if it's not going to be on Wednesday, then I give an announcement but it's every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. Please go and look at the app and see some of these other amazing creators that are out here. You can find me at laurelrutledge.com. All the stuff is there. You can get to my podcast there. You can get to this show there. You can see my radio show, which is live on every Tuesday morning. And we're always talking about how we get aligned, how we make sure we have a clear vision, and how we move into empowered action. So join me, follow these great creators, go check out Kyra, and have a fantastic evening. Kyra, thank you again for being here. And we're going to do it again, honey.
But let's do it. Kayla's got
Yes.
us covered. Let's do it. We got the
Yes.
chief on here.
All right.